Alright, welcome to ECO 2013 Macroeconomics. In this video tutorial, we'll be looking at question 1 from homework 6. So in this question, we have to use data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis to Part A, graph quarterly GDP from 1947 to present, and then for Part B, identify 5 major troughs in the business cycle using the graph. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to BEA website, and that is at bea.gov, the address given in there. And then when you come to it, you'll come to the main homepage. And on the main homepage, they have 3 major sections. The first major section is where all the data is right in front of your eyes. The second major section is a snapshot, a dashboard, if you will, of the latest economic data. And then the third part is this interactive data tab over here where you can actually go in and explore various types of data in the web interface. So what we're interested in is GDP, and we can click on the GDP button here to go to the data page with all of the data for GDP. And under GDP section, there's 3 ones. There's first the news release, which is the most recent GDP for the previous quarter that's been released. And it'll walk you through what it means and what the numbers are. The second one is the current dollar and real GDP. This is what we want. And then the third bullet is the percent change from preceding period. What that is the current dollar and real GDP, and BEA was kind enough to figure out what the percent change was from the previous period. So we'll go ahead and click on current and real GDP data, open that into Microsoft Excel. Alright, so we have our GDP data, and what we're interested in is we have the years in column A and column E. We are interested in the data in columns E, F, and G. So this is the quarterly data. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy both of these into another Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to pretty it up in that Excel spreadsheet, format it appropriately, and then we will make our graphs. So I have a blank worksheet here. I'm going to right click and paste my data there, all pasted. Okay, then I'm going to delete my 2 blank rows there. So now what I want to do is I have this table here. I want to put it into another table which is a little nicer. So what I'm going to do is create a column for year, another column for quarter, and then a column for the original time period, and then a column for GDP in billions of current dollars. So when I do this, I'm going to actually multiply all of the GDP over here by 1 billion. So then that way I get it in GDP in single dollars. Alright, so we have our GDP in current dollars and our GDP in 2009 dollars. So this should be year. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called the left function in Excel to extract these two, and there's other ways to do it. You could use text to columns, or you can use advanced find features but we're going to use the left and right formulas, and we're going to type in our year left, so equals left. And what this formula does is it allows us to extract the left characters of whatever text string we're looking at. So the first parameter in this function is what string do we want to take the characters from, and then the second optional parameter is how many characters do we want. Well, we want the left 4 characters of this text string because those left 4 characters represent the year. And then we want the right character from this text string because the rightmost character represents the quarter. And then together these two make up what's called a primary key. Our time period is just going to be the original time period, and then our GDP is going to just be the original GDP in current dollars times 1 billion, which is 1 followed by 9 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then same thing for $2009. It's just going to be the original GDP in $2009 times a billion. So 1 followed by 9 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then both of these GDPs I'm going to put into accounting format. You can use currency format. So we have them in accounting format, and then the next thing I want to do is I want to take this whole table and drag these cells all the way down to the bottom. There we go. And now my table's filled out, and these hash marks over here, the pound signs, it means that Excel can't display the number in the cell because the cell's too small. So you have to double click them in order to display the numbers. So with this done, we're going to convert this whole range into a table. So I'm going to select all of my data, to the bottom here, and then I'm going to go to Insert ribbon, and then I'm going to click Table. And then my data range is correct, and then I'm going to check my table has headers. And then what this does is it just allows me a nice way to organize and filter my data. So what I will do is, now that I have my table, I need to insert a graph. So I have to go to the Insert ribbon, and then normally we enter scatter plots, but in this case we want to put in a line plot. And that is because we're dealing with time data. However, if you put it in a scatter plot, it could still work. It should still work. So what we want to do is add our data series. So we'll go to right click the graph and go to select data, and we'll add our data series. So the series name is going to be GDP in current dollars, and then the series values are just going to be all of these series values here. Click OK. And then for the horizontal axis labels, we have to add in the years. So it's going to be all of the years. We're just going to add the years, not the quarters. We'll click OK. And then now we have to add the other GDP series, which is the $2009. So all of that is added. Good. And then we'll add our years as the horizontal axis labels. You don't have to do it this second step. because Excel already has them added to the graph. I always do that though, in case we delete the first data series on the graph, we have the axis labels for the second data series. So now what we want to do is play with these axes, clean them up a little bit. So I'm going to right click, format axes. Then I get my axes formatting box over here. And what I want to do is on the green bar under axes options, I want to go to display units and select trillions. So my data is in billions. However, my data in current dollars is billions, so that was the current dollars of the year that the GDP was recorded. But putting it in 2009, we get trillions. And then all the way back in the 90s and the 2000s, well, we have GDP of trillions of dollars in both data series. So we'll put it in trillions format. And then now we want to do is we want to adjust the numbers. So what I'm going to do is I want to get rid of those decimal places, and then I will change it from accounting to currency on the graph. The reason I put it in accounting format in the table, again, is because the dollar signs all line up and the decimal points all line up. So it's a lot easier to read than currency. However, on the graph, currency is probably the more appropriate one because we don't really care how well they line up. Alright, so that looks good. So the next thing we want to do is adjust the x-axis, and on that one we don't really need to worry about alignment. What we want is the axis options. This is going to be date axis, and then we are going to put on the labels down here, and we are going to specify a unit, and we are going to put it every 10 years. So there's generally 4 years because there's 4 quarters, so each year repeats 4 times, and then times every 10 years, that would mean that we would want a spacing of every 40 quarters. So we'll go ahead and click that. Now we have our spacing up here. Alright, and it looks good. So we're ready to insert our chart elements. So we go to the design ribbon and we add our primary horizontal axis, our primary vertical axis, and then our chart title, and of course a legend. So our chart title is US GDP. Our y-axis is going to be GDP US dollars. And then our x-axis title is going to be year. So now that we have this, we are ready to do our second step. So I'm going to rename this sheet question 1. And then I'm going to take this sheet, I'm going to copy and paste it so that way I can duplicate it. And once I duplicate it, I'm going to move the second duplication into a new chart, into a new spreadsheet, worksheet, excuse me. And this is going to be a new sheet, and I'm going to type in question 01 chart. And that will be the name of the sheet. So now I have the new sheet. What I want to do is, for the purposes of this graph, I'm going to get rid of my grid lines here. So I'm going to choose no line. And then what I want to do is I want to insert a shape on my chart. So I'm going to go to the insert ribbon and I'm going to find the shapes drop down, and I'm going to insert a swirl. That's right. Just insert a swirl here. There we go. And one thing about the circle is it's not really clear, so I can't see behind it. So what I want to do is I want to make the filling clear. So I'll go to right click, format axis, or excuse me, format object, and then I'll get my format screen on the right side here, and under fill I'm going to change the line to green and the fill to green. So under fill I'm going to change it from solid blue to solid green, and this is just my preference. You want something that's going to stand out and contrast against the two lines. And then I'm going to change the transparency to 60%, like that. So now when I put it over a line, I can see. So that's good. Then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to change the line to the actual green. Alright, so I think that this is good. We can change the weight of the line to 2 so that the line border is a lot thicker. I think this is good. I'll probably decrease the size a little bit, but we're good. So let's copy this circle 5 times. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 additional circles. Alright, so let's go ahead and start putting our circles on the graph. So we see right here there's the first major recession. That's a pretty big trough right there, and that of course was the recession in 2007 and 8, where we had the housing crash, which jittered the stock market a little bit, and then about a year later the stock market just tumbled as people were unable to pay their mortgages. So the next recession that we have would be there was one in the 1990s, and that was when George Bush was in office, George Bush Sr. And then there was one in the 1970s that we can go after. This was a really big one. This is where stagflation came out. And there were a few in the 1980s, so we'll hover it over both of those ones. And you can see where the GDP went down. So a recession is typically defined as a drop in GDP for 2 consecutive quarters. So it should be pretty easy. If you see something that drops on this graph, it's probably a recession. And then there's one after the Korean War. There we go. So what you can do now is you can investigate when these recessions were and just put on a little box which describes the year, the quarters of the recession, and then what the recession was, just one sentence, and you should be finished. So that will help you answer part A and B on question 1. Alright, so good job. Make sure that you save your work. So I'll save it to my desktop as homework 6. Excellent.